Oh, hi, my friend. It's your old buddy, Doc. Back again with Story Time with Doc, Part 2, a continuation of last week. Captain Blownaparte and the Golden Skeleton by Helga Hopkins and David Benham. So, we've read a few stories of her, and we definitely love all of them. So, let's go ahead and get started on this one. Part 2, The Golden Arm. Captain Blownaparte and his crew were tucking into a very large fish pie. The golden skull watched them enviously, because fish pie had been his favorite dish in the days before a nasty ghost captain turned him into a golden skeleton. Now all his golden bones are hidden in different and dangerous places. But Captain Blownaparte and his crew are helping him to find them so he can become a human again. Happily, Captain Blownaparte has already found the golden neck bones. Next, we're going to look for one of the golden arms, chuckled Captain Blownaparte. Yes, indeed, but I wish it wasn't hidden in a cave of a frightening sea serpent, grumbled Alfredo. But, fortified by the delicious fish pie, they all sailed on towards the sea serpent's cave. Aye, and it looks like they're having a wondrous feast. I think it's always important to have a feast before and after a good adventure. Soon they arrived at the cave, but the serpent had spotted the ship and suddenly shot out of the water and grabbed Captain Blownaparte by his shiny hook hand. "Oh, please don't eat him," screamed Sproogie. "All those metal bits attached to the captain will give you the most terrible tummy ache." Then, as the crew watched in horror, the serpent dropped the captain and angrily grabbed Sproogie instead. Oh no, it looks like Sproogie may end up being lunch for the sea serpent. Luckily, the serpent quickly had a change of heart and dropped Sproogie back on the ship's deck. "I'm not hungry anyway, but I'll behave myself if you help me find my missing wife, Mrs. Sea Serpent. Some nasty pirates recently captured her and took her away to sell to a circus. She's being kept on a secret island, and I've been searching for her ever since." Captain Blownaparte nodded knowingly. "Okay, if you give us the golden arm, we'll help you find your wife." "And I can tell you something about this nasty business too," said Alfredo. "I heard that Captain Specklebeard is the pirate who has a sea serpent locked away somewhere, and that he keeps a map of the secret island in his back pocket." Well, that should be easy to find. Find the pants, find the map. Captain Specklebeard was the owner of a very dodgy pirate tavern. So, with Sproogie in tow, Captain Blownaparte set off to retrieve the map. Prosper, the clever parrot, and Turnip, the pet rat, hurried along behind them as usual, determined to join the fun. When they arrived at the tavern, they quietly peered through one of the dusty windows. The tavern was full of extremely fierce-looking pirates. "Oh my goodness," grumbled Sproogie. "Specklebeard is wearing a kilt, so his trousers with the map in the pocket must be upstairs. What on earth shall we do now?" Aye, and it's perfectly okay for pirates to wear kilts. Quite a few of them do. "Leave this to me," said Turnip, letting out an ear-splitting whistle. Seconds later, they were surrounded by a band of rats in all shapes and sizes. "These are my dear cousins," said Turnip proudly. "And how exactly is this going to help us?" inquired Prosper. "Well, you see, with the exception of Captain Blownaparte, all pirates are traditionally afraid of rats, said Turnip. Just watch this. Turnip whistled again, and all of his cousins streamed into the tavern. Inside there was sudden, deathly silence. Frozen to the spot, the pirates stared at the rats in total shock. Then, pushing and shoving each other, they clambered up on the wobbly tables and chairs in a blind panic. There they all stood up on tippy toes, holding on to each other for safety. You see, said Turnip proudly, problem solved. Well done, I never would have thought to use the rats. What a great idea. Sproogie and Captain Blownaparte rushed past the cowering pirates and ran upstairs to Captain Specklebeard's bedroom. When they opened the door, they couldn't believe their eyes. Specklebeard's clothes were moving around the room. The nightshirt was dancing with the trousers. And the socks were twirling around on the ceiling. Said Prosper. These clothes have never, ever been washed. They're so smelly. They've taken on a life of their own. When we get the map, we'll have to run fast, or the clothes will come running after us. With everyone tightly holding their noses, Prosper swiftly plucked the map from the back pocket of the Specklebeard's trousers and flew off out of the window, gasping for air. The captain, Sproogie and Turnip, made their getaway down the stairs. But sure enough, the smelly clothes were flapping along right behind them. And those clothes were ready to go. That's why we do our laundry and pick up our room. We don't want angry, dancing clothes. When they reached the water's edge, the captain pushed the rowing boat into the water and started rowing like mad. Sproogie shrieked as a dirty nightshirt grabbed him round the neck and tried to pull him out of the boat. But Captain Blownaparte sliced his cutlass leg right through the nightshirt's grubby sleeves and rowed away even faster. "Oi, that was a close shave," panted Sproogie, looking back at the stinky socks and smelly pajamas, which were angrily jumping up and down on the beach. The laundry's upset, but it was stopped by the water. Opening the map, they saw where the secret island was. It was Palm Island, about 2 hours away. And Captain Specklebeard had drawn a big red cross on the map showing where Mrs. Sea Serpent was being held. They set sail straight away, and after about an hour, they suddenly saw the Sea Serpent's head bobbing up from under the water right alongside them. "Is this as fast as you can go?" he grumbled. "Do you mind if I speed the ship up a bit?" And with a slithery twirl, he wrapped his tail around the ship's figurehead and swam off at breakneck speed. Captain Blownaparte and the crew all tumbled backwards across the deck in utter amazement. They've never traveled this fast before. Sproogie doubled up with laughter. "I wish we always had an outboard serpent to drive us, to pull us along like this." Aye, that sea serpent was going fast. With the serpent's help, they quickly reached the secret island, where their newfound friend offered to keep watch over the ship during the search for Mrs. Serpent. Before long, Captain Blownaparte realized the island was made up entirely of big boulders, which was going to make the search extremely difficult. Everyone was becoming extremely tired, but still continued searching. "Hey, there's an opening in the rocks," Turnip suddenly screamed. He squeezed into the secret shaft, going down between the rocks, but promptly started to slide down rather quickly. Sproogie tried to grab him, but lost his footing and started to slide down too. Desperately, Rosie grabbed Sproogie's leg, but she couldn't stop him and tumbled down the shaft as well. Captain Blownaparte stood peering down the narrow hole in horror. "What on earth will become of them now?" he asked Alfredo. "Oh no, they fell down a hole. Hopefully they're okay. We don't want anybody getting hurt on this adventure." Meanwhile, Turnip and his friends slid down the shaft, which opened into a huge cave containing a very deep lake. One after the other, they plopped into the lake, but were able to swim to the rocky edges and clamber out. As they all sat there shivering and blowing their noses, Sproogie reminded everyone to keep an eye out for Mrs. Serpent. Aye, good idea. That's what they're looking for. They're trying to find Mrs. Serpent. It didn't take long before the giant head of Mrs. Serpent appeared out of the lake. She looked them over and grumpily sniffed them up and down. "The food portions in here are getting smaller and smaller." Then, taking a closer look at Tiny Turnip, she complained that his furry one wasn't even enough to fill a tooth. But when Turnip heard this, he really lost his temper and paddled towards the serpent and screamed at her. "I'm not a tasty meal, you silly serpent. I'm here to save you." He got angry because she thought he was a snack. Mrs. Serpent wasn't listening and was just about to swallow Turnip when Prosper swooped in as fast as lightning. Just in time, he grabbed Turnip and whisked him out of harm's way. Then he flew up into the serpent's head and explained that they were all only there to save her, and that her husband was waiting for her down at the water's edge. "We'll be lucky if I ever get out of here," sighed the serpent. "The door is always locked, and the key is hung on a nail on the other side of the door." They all looked desperately at the huge, heavy door. "All right, all is not lost," said Prosper, who had a clever idea. "Turnip can crawl under that gap at the bottom of the door, get the key, and push it back to us under the gap." Well, that is a fine idea. And I think Turnip's just the rat for it. Turnip was not so keen. The gap looked really small, even for him. Rosie and Sproogie tried hard to push him through the gap, but every time they pushed, Turnip squealed loudly. Mrs. Serpent began to get impatient and pushed Sproogie and Rosie out of the way. Then, with one almighty shove, she forced Turnip through the gap. "Are you okay?" asked Sproogie, looking a bit concerned. "What do you think?" complained Turnip. "I'll need at least an hour to count my legs and whiskers." "Yes, but before you do that, could you please let us have the key?" pleaded Rosie. They heard a rustling, followed by a clanking, as the giant key was squeezed under the door. They were freed! I guess their idea worked. Wondrous. Back at the entrance to the shaft, Captain Blownaparte was becoming desperately worried. What if Mrs. Serpent had eaten Rosie and Sproogie? And Turnip, too, blathered Alfredo, wiping the tears from his eyes. What do you mean? All of a sudden a voice from behind them said. I don't eat my friends. Looking back over their shoulders, the crew were mightily relieved to see the lost group up on Mrs. Serpent's slippery back and hanging on for dear life. Everyone was overcome with happiness, and Alfredo's tears turned into the biggest smile you'd ever seen. It looks like they got out safely. They all hurried back to the ship, where the two serpents embraced and thanked the captain and his crew for bringing them back together again. Then, with a happy hoot, they curled both their tails around the ship's figurehead and doubled the speed back home to the harbor where Mr. Sea Serpent handed over the golden arm as promised. Hooray! Boy, and they're reunited, and it feels so good. As the sun went down, Captain Blownaparte and his crew licked their lips as they waited to begin the ship's customary feast, which they all look forward to after every exciting adventure. Sproogie began reaching for a tasty-looking pie, but the captain stopped him in his tracks and announced, "No one eats before the golden skull is reunited with his arm." Alfredo agreed, but also began to grumble about the dangers of finding where the other bones were hidden. "Well, think about that after the grand feast," beamed Captain Blownaparte, rubbing his hungry tummy, which was beginning to make funny gurgling noises. Finally, as Sproogie was given the honor of attaching the arm onto the delighted golden skull, they all began a very noisy evening. The end. Aye. And it looks like they have accomplished 2 of their grand missions. They're finding pieces and pieces of the golden skeleton and reuniting them, coming ever closer to making him a human again. So, with that, I thank you, and come back next week for part 3 of Captain Blownaparte and the Golden Skeleton. I look forward to seeing you all there. Until next time, be well.